Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stover. Signed, sealed and delivered. After almost 2 decades of back and forth, the Petroleum Industry Bill is now an act. Now, since its signing into law, it has dominated the media circle with issues surrounding its implementation and benefits to host communities leading the debate and public discourse. The enacted 3% benefit from oil companies' operating expenses to host communities higher than 30% of profit oil and gas for frontier exploration is considered as a right step in the right direction, which will change the narrative and raise hopes for a brighter future for the host communities. Now, experts say it's still work in progress, bearing in mind that there are gray areas to be looked into in the Act. So what will be the impact of the Petroleum Industry Act on the host communities? How will the Act address the environmental degradation and youth restiveness in the Niger Delta? This and more will be the thrust of our conversation tonight on NTA Tuesday Live as we focus on the Petroleum Industry Act and the paradigm shift to host communities. But before our conversation, let's get to see this report by Joseph Johnson.
Following many years of waiting for the Petroleum Industry Bill to be passed, many Nigerians, especially in the Niger Delta, expected a near-perfect law from the National Assembly that would allay their worries and address age-long concerns about lack of infrastructural development in the area and environmental degradation, which have led to the loss of livelihood for many. Chronic ailments like cancer and birth defects emanating from all exploration and production activities. Last month, the PIB was finally passed into law by the National Assembly and speedily assented to by the President. The newly enacted Petroleum Industry Act (PIA), many say, has not seemed to meet the desired expectations. Neither does it seem to have addressed the concerns of Niger Deltans, which have caused them to weep over the last few decades.
The community depends on water for their economic livelihood. There is no job because people cannot go to fishing again, they can't go to farm again because the oil have destroyed everywhere.
For others, it is not a case of how long, but how well. They are already talking about amendments to the PIA, even before the ink with which President Buhari signed the PIB into law is dry. A report by Center for Social Studies and Development shows that all the systems of benefits transfer to oil-producing communities put in place by the federal government have over the years not addressed the exploitation, degradation and deprivation suffered by the communities.
There's no benefit. We don't benefit anything in oil spillage in this our area. We don't benefit. We don't get anything.
However, according to some quarters, in the area of local benefits, the systems of benefits transfer to communities, including the NDDC and the Ministry of Niger Delta. The 13% derivation fund, ecological funds, were superintended and have failed to ensure that communities adequately benefit from natural resource earnings.
Right now in the Niger Delta, there is still an ongoing exploration for oil. So they are still going to benefit from the 30% of that, of the profit oil, which is about $375 million per annum. Then in addition to that, they have the 13% derivation fund goes to the Niger Delta. We have the Niger Delta Ministry. We have the Niger Delta Development Commission. We have the amnesty program. All these are geared towards the development of the Niger Delta.
These and other issues will form the talking point on the program Tuesday Live.
All right, that report sets the tone for our discussion tonight. But let me introduce our guests. I would like to welcome to this program Prince Mike Emu. He is National Chairman, Host Communities of Nigeria Producing Oil and Gas. That's HostCon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, viewers.
Let me also welcome to this program Imabe Xavier Oscar is a member, host communities Ogoni. He joins us from our Port Harcourt Network Center. Good to see you.
I thank you for having me.
Let me also introduce Joseph Abugu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He is a professor of commercial and industrial law, University of Lagos. He joins us via Zoom from Warri in Delta State. Thanks for being with us, Prof.
Thank you, Cyril. Glad to be here.
Okay. And let me also welcome to this program tonight the Honorable Emmanuel Akpanobong. He's a medical practitioner and a former member of the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly. He is the Deputy National Secretary of PANDEF. He also joins us via Zoom from Uyo in Akwa Ibom State. Thanks for being with us, Honorable.
Thank you, Cyril.
All right. As usual, we acquaint you with the procedure of the program. I guess we are all familiar with it by now, but just to update you on the procedure. As usual, you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. The numbers will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of the numbers and call in. However, for those who are calling in tonight, do us a favor when your call gets through to the studio. Do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. You turn down the volume, it will avoid the hurlback or echo. That's the best way to do it. So just turn down the volume. And once you're passed on to the studio, we like to encourage you to go straight to the point, ask your question or make a comment. Don't waste too much time on the greetings. You don't have much time. So be quick, go straight to the point so others can also get on the platform and air their views. So once again, welcome to NTA Tuesday Live. It's the Petroleum Industry Act, and the focus tonight is on host communities. Let us start with Prince Mike Emu, who is the National Chairman, HOSCON. That's the Host Communities of Nigeria Producing Oil and Gas. First, on a general note, what are your feelings about this new act?
I feel very, very happy and content with this very new act, the Petroleum Industry Act. And as a result, I and the executive of the host communities of Nigeria producing oil and gas, we all gather together to celebrate the act and also to appreciate the Night Assembly, appreciate Mr. President, who we now believe that we can write his name in the Guinness Book of Record for creating such opportunity to the host community by signing the PIB to act. So I feel very, very happy, proud of what Mr. President have done and the Night Assembly. This is what we expected for the past 13 years, and it eluded us. And for the past 50 years over 50 years of oil exploitation and exploration in Nigeria, there was no law that favors the host community. But this is a law that has just come direct to favor the host community. So I feel very, very happy. And it's happened during my tenure as the chairman of the host community. To God be the glory.
All right, we'll put the same question to Imabe Xavier Oscar, who's in Port Harcourt Network Center. You are a member of the host communities Ogoni, and so tell us, what are your thoughts on the Petroleum Industry Act coming in after so many years of false starts, twists and turns?
Thank you very much. I want to sincerely appreciate Mr. President, President Muhammadu Buhari, for taking it as one of his priorities to sign the PIBBA into act. This has been on the table of the National Assembly for over 14 years now, more than 2 decades, and nothing has happened about it. But because we have a listening president who is actually ready to see through the affairs and understand the plans of the people, and then see how he can be able to give us a better system of governance, has made it possible. But on the other way around, even though the people are not totally happy about it, because at this point, there is an expectation. The expectation is not totally met because we were expecting something more than this. We're actually expecting something like 10% or 15%, and having given us 3%, there's always a saying that we want to behave like the Oliver Twist. We thank you for the one you have given to us. Then the challenge is very simple. Now, one of the challenge is that we are going to be challenged going about the amendment, where people look at the amendment process of how we are going to meet up the other ones. There is a saying that goes, let's accept what we have, and then pending future way we can be able to amend. But I was thinking, the president, in his wisdom, to be able to at least take his time before signing the bill, and then see if the people are totally happy about it. Like I said, we are happy about it, and that they actually see the need of signing this bill. But it would have been something much better than this, even though we have accepted it. Now, the process is how do we go about it, about implementation. And that's the process we are now. But I think it is a good way, and we are going to support the process of implementation, and we also want it to be transparent, because the only thing that can affect the process is when the implementation process is not transparent. It will also bring about disharmony amongst our people. The people of the Niger Delta struggle so much to actualize this stage we are today. We go to our farmland, just like the documentary you played, you can see people are crying about the oil spillage and how degraded their lands are. And even some of us cannot go to fishing again because our land, our fish, we cannot get any good aquatic systems again. So I think we deserve more, and we also need more to better the lives of the people of the Niger Delta. The people of Niger Delta have suffered so much, and at this point, if the president wants to give us a better result, we need a result that can be able to stand for the test of time.
Thank you. We'll get into more details as we progress in this discussion, but let's go over to Professor Joseph Abugu. Prof, I suppose the only way to bring this to you is for you to tell us the provisions of this law. You know, now it's an act, and assess this with the background of how long it took. Yes, we've heard divergent opinions about it, but let's start from the basics and ask you to assess this law now.
Thank you, Cyril. Thank you, gentlemen in the studio. And Nigerians, good evening. First, I am not as enthused as my HostCom chairman and my brother from Ogoni land. The PIB Act, the PIA as it is now, it is easy to applaud it, but you applaud it only in the context that a morsel out of the pie that the Niger Deltans creed has just been given to them. And so it is easy to see Mr. President from a very paternalistic point of view that, he has pandered a little bit to the yearnings of the people of the Niger Delta. But from a very philosophical and fundamental basis, the PIB Act, the PIA as it is, simply follows the tradition of the provisions of the Petroleum Act and the provisions of the 1999 Constitution, which sequestrated all oil mineral resources and vested them exclusively in the federal government of Nigeria. I think the utmost yearning of the people of the Niger Delta is for resource control. They need to be able to control their destiny in terms of who and who is not entitled to explore and exploit petroleum and mineral resources on their lands. So you see that the Act, in its very first section, declares very unequivocally that the title and ownership of petroleum resources in this country still vests in the federal government of Nigeria. In other words, nothing has changed. In other words, all the clamor for resource control, all the clamor for devolution of fiscal responsibility, by Niger Deltans and indeed some other states, stakeholders in this federation, that the federal government has not taken to any of those needs. So what we see in terms of provisions for host communities under the Act is simply a palliative, a piece of the pie to keep the crying baby shut up. Go and mind the little that the federal government, the federation can give to you to address what they perceive to be your problems of underdevelopment and degradation of the environment. So in that sense, I would not quickly join my brothers in applauding that, this has been forthcoming for over 40 years. What has been forthcoming over 40 years is the regulation of the industry for the benefits of the federal government. It is not the regulation of the industry with control vesting in the indigenous communities where these crude oil and gas and mineral resources, are vested by Almighty God.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much,
yes.
Prof. We will come back to you and explore other aspects, taking it from your impressions of the Act so far. But let's go over to you and ask the opinions of Honorable Emmanuel Akwanobong. Honorable, let's hear you.
Thank you, Cyril. I think we in the Pan-Niger Delta Forum and by extension, the people of the Niger Delta, we have been interested, particularly in how to control what we have, and that will encourage us to develop the process of generating this wealth. But in the meantime, since this bill, now a law, has been in the pipeline, it has been passed into law, it's now an act. And with the provisions and with the objectives in the bill, it is hoped that the implementation of the processes of oil and gas in Nigeria will follow international standards, especially the unbundling of the NNPC and so on, making sure that operations and the transactions therein follow international guidelines. Yes, the provision, particularly for the host community, have been a subject of contention. The people of the Niger Delta had expected something higher. That this is given this little is not a pleasing thing to us in the Niger Delta. But however, since there is hope and there is provision for amendments, we can start off with this. But beyond that, I know that there are some beautiful laws in this country where implementation becomes so difficult. I recall that most years, allocation in the budget, so percent to NDDC, to this, to that. But when it comes to actual release and the timing of the release, it renders the purpose for which those provisions were made useless. I just want to hope that the implementation of this act will be such that whatever is provided gets into action to the benefit of the people. So we warmly receive the bill, the act now, and hope that it will be to the benefit of the people of the Niger Delta. Thank you, Cyril.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We've heard the views now of all our guests, so let's go into other aspects of this act now, and which is the basic thing that almost everyone is talking about. How will the provisions of this law impact the host communities? And this is the very, very first issue to look at here. How will it?
I, as the national chairman of the host community, I want to say that I have a challenge, and my challenge is not the 3%. My challenge is how we are going to manage the 3%, the utilization of the 3%. We had, just as someone have just said, we had 30% derivation. We had the NDDC, 3% of total national budget of the federal government of Nigeria. Then we talk about the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, talk about the PAP, Presidential Amnesty Program. All these are for the development of the Niger Delta. Yet, 30% derivation alone gave us over 44 trillion, not billion, for the past 22 years. Where is it? We couldn't manage it well. NDDC, till date, we don't manage it well. So my challenge is that how are we going to make use of this 3% effectively? Are we going to look at diversification from oil and gas to agriculture in order to create employment for the youth? Who are the technocrats? In terms of homogenic innovation diffusionists, who are the sons and daughters of the Niger Delta that will be able to come out and say, best make use of this money to develop the Niger Delta in terms of agriculture, in terms of industrialization, so we can bring about transformation and transmogrification to the Niger Delta. So my challenge today is not just the 3%, is how we can harness all together, how we can all come together. Then we have a master plan, think about what we can do, consult our leaders of thought, consult our traditional rulers, ask for professionals, come together. So we don't think of how we are going to manage the 3%. Where do we cite the headquarters? The law of PIA says that there is Host Community Trust Fund Commission. So there is a commission. This commission, the directors of this commission, the chairman, the commissioners of the commission, just as it is in NDDC, will not be appointed by Mr. President, not by the governors of the Niger Delta, but by the host community. That is what the law has provided. And so we must think about who and who we are going to bring on board. How will this money be managed? What are we going to do with the money? That is my worry. Some people may say that 3% is just too small. If it is even 20%, who manages matter? So my challenge is that if it is 10%, 3%, 2%, 20%, who manage it? Were we able to manage 30% derivation? That is still against the law as amended. The 1999 American Constitution stated that Section 162, Section 2 made it very, very clear that 30% derivation is in the executive legislative list, cap 39 of the Constitution, in favor of the host community as a result of the loss of their fishing rights, farming land, and so on and so on. But this money was carried and handed over to the governors of PDP by then. And we protested against it as agitators. And we took a march to the villa. We met with Mr. President then, Obasanjo, who now said, all right, he has made a mistake by giving 30% derivation to the governors. And he set up the Socio-Economic Council for Coastal State. The retired DG of DSS, A.K. Osford, from Rivers State, was appointed to be the chairman. That was what led to the creation of Delta State Oil Producing Development Commission, 50% of the 30% given to the host community. Edo State 40%, Ondo State 40%, Abia 40%, Imo State 40%, to the Oil Area Producing Commission because an error was made by Mr. President Olusegun Obasanjo, who gave the money to the governor. Till date, as I speak to Nigerians and listeners, Akwa Ibom State produced the highest in the Niger Delta in terms of production quantum. Yet, there is nothing given to members of the host community. River State follow, nothing given to the host community. Bayelsa State, nothing given to the host community. Till date, since time of Obasanjo till now. So those who are clamoring for the money is too small or 3% is too small here and there, that which the law of Nigeria gave to us, 30% derivation, as amended Constitution, Section 162, Section 2 of the Constitution. Where is the money? So at this point of view is that now that we've got the PIA, 30% derivation should now be given to the host community by Mr. President creating presidential committee to manage the 30% derivation in favor of the host community. Right. Gas flare is in the PIA in favor of the host community. 3% favor of the host community.
Okay, that's an interesting angle you've brought up now, and I'm sure the other members of the panel would comment on that. But let's go back to Port Harcourt. And Imeabe Saviour Oscar, again, you've heard Prince Mike Emu. The issue, as we've started now, is how will this law impact the lives of people in the Niger Delta? He's brought an interesting angle to it. Let's hear you.
That has always been a very serious challenge. How did this development get to the people that need it most? In situations like this, it becomes very challenging. If a lot of things have been going on and the people that actually need these things do not have access to it. We have people in our various communities that are suffering, that need this development, but how will this development get to them? And that's why we are looking at the impact of this act to the life of the commoners of the host communities. Currently, we are aware, just like it has been cited already, the NDDC that is set up today. Today, we are now protesting to get what belongs or what due us. Do we need to make protests before we get what belongs to us? Now, the community persons, those of us that are in the communities, those of us that reside in our village, what do we do? How do we benefit from this process? We have leadership problem in our system today. And because of our leadership problem, our leadership system has not been very transparent. And that's one of our challenges we have today. If not, why should we have problem with financial misappropriation? People don't know how to comport themselves when they have access to this finance. And that has been a very serious challenge. When the monies come to them, do they remember the people that they are representing? The answer is no. When this money comes to their hand or get to their table, do they remember that this money was made for a purpose? The answer is no. Because if it was so, now look at the first one we have. NDDC, like it has been talked about, is a product, an establishment that was gotten out of agitations and struggle. Just like the PIB was also an agitation that came out of struggle. Now, what is the purpose? What has been the dividends of NDDC? Have they actually met its purpose? The answer is no. Today, since last week on Tuesday till now, we are protesting that we are tired of a sole administrator, that we need a situation where we can have a board that can be able to stand in. If we are talking about NDDC, let us be able to look at the illegalities that is also going on in NDDC. Now we don't have a board in NDDC, and it was set up as an interventionist agency to take care of the oil host communities. What are they doing right now? The sole administrator is just there. The Ministry of Niger Delta has not been able to handle that. Now we are also using the opportunity to call on Mr. President with immediate effect to please look at constituting the board of NDDC. It's affecting us, and most of these challenges will also be addressed. Now, come to the struggle that we have today. We are talking about the PIB, the PIA. What is the product now? How will the host communities benefit from it? Now, what is the system? How is it prepared? How is it arranged for the people in the grassroots or at the grassroots level to get benefit? We want to see how they can bring us into a roundtable decision. Let us see how the host communities are part of the decision-making roundtable. How do we be part of this decision that will be able to survive the people of the Niger Delta? The people of Niger Delta have suffered so much and have contributed so much into the economy of this situation. We have benefited nothing from what we have contributed. This is what is coming to us is not what we expect to get at this point. But we are expecting that something more will be given to us at this point. So the impact is actually what is the challenging aspect we are looking at now. We are not seeing how effective, how positive this impact will be on the people or on the lives or in the lives of the host communities. And that's where our challenges is coming from. And that's a big question. A big question that we are yet to answer in a way that can suit everybody. It's a serious question. What is the impact on the host communities? Go to our river, go to our farmland, go to some of the places we reside. The atmosphere, the air we breathe today, you cannot talk good about them. Now we're having so many reasons to have challenges, but we are not seeing a way of overcoming them. Now, what we should look at is how do community persons becomes decision makers or be on the round table where decisions will be taken about them. It is not all about our leaders. We are not happy about our leaders anymore.
Samuel, we'll return to you. Let's go over to Prof now. Prof, well, you say by your submission that the act is more an attempt to revolutionize the operations of the petroleum industry, to put it in line with best practices, other than, satisfying the yearnings of the people for resource control. Now, if we are to remain on that premise, and I say, with the provisions, how would it improve the operations of the industry as to have benefits for the people from where the product is sourced?
Thank you, Syria. Don't mind my being critical, but I cannot avoid being critical for the purposes of ensuring that host communities get what they deserve under the present arrangement. If we take a critical look at the provisions of Section 240 and Section 242 of the PIA, it provides modalities for the establishment of host communities development trust. Now, so we're not talking of just one trust, we're talking of several trusts. And it provides specifically that these trusts are to be put in place, constituted by the holder of a petroleum mining license or mining lease. In other words, the constitution of the trust fund will be at the behest of the oil company. It also specifically provides in Section 242 that the oil companies are settlor, of the trust, shall constitute the board of the trust fund and see to the proper administration of the trust for the development of the host communities. Indeed, it went on to provide in Section 316 that any oil company that has an existing development project or scheme under any memorandum of understanding or trust with any community would immediately transfer such existing the proceeds of any such existing agreement or memorandum of understanding into the trust fund to be constituted. While the bill also makes provision that the board, even though constituted by the oil companies, shall constitute shall comprise of a fair representation of the host community, a lot is still left unsaid. The Act also provides that in the utilization of the fund under the trust, at least 75% must be dedicated to capital projects in the host community. Now, The Act, however, falls short of prescribing a sanction if the board of any of these trust funds refuses, fails, or neglects to spend up to 75% in the development of capital projects. Is such a default actionable at the instance of members of the host community? The Act didn't say anything about that. To make matters worse, you will see that oil companies, by the provisions of Section 240 and 242, will establish multiple trust funds. So if there is Total, Chevron, and all the other big names operating within a particular host community or local government, they will then have to deal with 2 or more trust funds. In fact, if you go by the number of mining licenses that are operative in Nigeria today, the operators or settlers under the provisions of Section 240 and 242 far exceed about 50. So already the Act creates a problem of implementation. I recognize that Mr. President has set up a panel, a committee for the purposes of implementing and bringing to fruition the provisions of the Act. But immediately, from a very critical point, I see that what has been trusted is a maze of confusion, unless the committee on implementation is able to fashion out a structure within the provisions of the Act that is able to accommodate all the possible development trust funds that oil companies in a particular locale will put in place, and provide mechanism for harmonization of projects, within these communities. May I also recognize and acknowledge the fact that the NDDC is supposed to have projects in some of these communities. The Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs also has responsibility for development of some of these projects. One of the challenges we have in the past is the fact that an oil company relates with a local community, completes a project. Some of our politicians take that same project and award a contract on that specific subject and then claim the benefit. And the people, being ignorant of the fact that there is dual contracts for the same project, are unable to monitor how their funds are used. So there is also need in the implementation to have a mechanism by which capital development projects in host communities will be harmonized from those accruing from the Development Trust Fund, those that otherwise will fall under the purview of the NDDC under its mandate, and those that the Niger Delta Ministry would otherwise make part of its development projects in the Niger Delta. All of this creates a maze that, you find at the end of the day that the oil companies are actually just been set up against host communities. I actually doubt whether this is going to create peace in the Niger Delta.
Okay, Prof. All right, let's quickly, ask Honorable Emmanuel Akpanobong. Do you share the same fears that the setting up of the trusts, the various trusts, would be entirely at the behest of the oil companies? Do you share those fears as well?
I don't have that fear. My fear doesn't get to that extent. I believe that the implementation committee has a great deal of responsibility to dissect these acts further. What is important is to go into activities that will increase the productive capacities of the people, of the communities. And we know that currently cost of living and cost of doing businesses in the Niger Delta region in particular has been so high. The poor road network, poor electricity, and so on. Anybody that ventures into some level of production has a problem. And I expect that the implementation of the Act, of the provisions of the Act, that will get to ease off these problems will be the greater way to impact positively on the communities. I do not have specific fears about the trust funds and the various committees that are expected to be set up, as long as the implementation committee is positive about their responsibilities to implement to the letter the provisions of the Act, and then direct activities below them in what should be done in the communities.
All right, Honorable, I'll ask you to just pause a while here. Let's take in this call and we'll return to you to conclude on that point. We have Ololade calling in from Ilorin. Ololade, go ahead.
I'm Ololade from Ilorin, Kwara State, Ololade. So I want to participate in this discussion this evening now as regards to the 3% given to the host community. What I want to say is that personally, those who everybody has their reason. The House of Reps recommended 5%, while the National Assembly, the Senate recommended 3%. I think it's the Senate that caused this thing. For me, they're supposed to have synergized with the House of Reps so that they will come out with the same position. But 5% and 3%, they are the one who created this discussion and argument over every year. Now, my advice to the host community is that when the president has assented to it now, I think it's a right step in the right direction that much time is not wasted again over the signing of the bill. So I want them to justify the confidence imposed on them by spending that one in a proper way, because we have a lot of series of issues with various bodies that is responsible for one thing or the other in Niger Delta area. We have the Niger Delta Development Commission. We have the Niger Delta Ministry. What we have been hearing about most of these bodies, it shows that the citizens itself, all is not still well with them. That's why the formation of the bandages of this body here and there. In the past, we have one part there also. It is always complaint of financial misappropriation. So now, since this one has been signed, I will advise them to please let us watch this one. There could be a room for another negotiation another time, but they have to justify the one given to them now. That's just my advice. Akololade from Ilorin, Kwara State. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for calling in. So let's return to Honorable Emmanuel. And at this point, we'll say, well, you can hear from most of the views being espoused here that there are also fears about the leadership challenge in implementing the provisions of this law. So just as you round off your thoughts on the question of the trusts, do you also have fears about a leadership crisis and who's to determine who leads what? Who would constitute that commission of the host communities?
Well, I don't have much doubts, provided the teleguiding tendencies from outside will be reduced. The people of the Niger Delta region, people of the host communities that have responsibility to generate the leadership in these committees know who can lead them. In most cases, we have issues with people interfering with that right of the people to select who should lead. And with the guidelines given, and with the expectation I have of the implementation committee, I shouldn't have much fears about this. And I must emphasize what I said earlier, that if the implementation looks at spending on capital projects, things that will cut across board to give relief to people, so that those who are doing businesses, those who are in production, will have some freedom, some assistance. Like roads, I keep on saying that to carry food from one section of the host community to the other is a problem. Those roads are no longer motorable, no electricity, and so on. So if these things are targeted, and with the belief I have that the people in the implementation committee would do the right thing, I shouldn't have much fears.
All right. Thank you very much. From the tone of the discussion so far, Prince M, Professor raised some fundamental issues. I could see while he was talking, you didn't quite agree to some of them. But there's one thing he particularly mentioned, and he says there's an absence of, measures, sanctions for those companies that fail to implement the 75% provision.
I want to appreciate Prof for his submission. I do not really, I will not agree with him totally. Based on the fact that the PIA falls under three broad spectrums: the laws that guide the federal government of Nigeria, the laws that guides the settler. Settlers are the oil company, the IOC, the LOC, the laws that guides the company, and the laws that guides the host community. I'm concerned merely with the law that affect the host community that I'm the chairman to. But going back to Prof, the issue of settler, the PIA does not specify that settlers will not determine the fate of the host community. No. The PIA does not make provision that federal government will not decide on what affect the host community or the 3% or the trust fund. No. Prof said there are a lot of funds in the PIA funds. The gas flare penalty funds goes to NNPC for the development of, for the establishment of companies in the oil producing area, especially on the area of gas flare convert to energy. And so the Honorable Minister for Petroleum, who is the chairman of the steering committee, not implementation committee, but steering committee, as set up by Mr. President, and the Honorable Minister for Petroleum State, Timothy Silva, made it very, very clear that the oil company, where they need to work in line with the law and in favor of the host community, that should be done, because no company will be established in Nigeria Delta without the approval of the host community that a gas flaring company that will convert the gas to energy without consulting the host community. So the settlers will work along with the host community will work along with the settler and with the federal government.
Okay.
That's how I see it. That's how it is in the law.
Okay, let's return to the phones and then we'll come back to you. Isaac from Ondo, hello. No, that certainly isn't Isaac from Ondo. That's a beep of a dropped call. So back to you.
So for what I'm saying so far is that the IOC, LOC refer to in the PIA as settler. That's the company. They are not to rule over the host community. This 3% is in the favor of the host community. It's just like the argument of 30% of frontiers. 30% of what? 30% of NNPC profits. And for the past 20 years, NNPC have just declared profit just last week. For the past 20 years, that means there was nothing for the frontiers. Now the profit will come. And the frontiers cover not just only Chad Basin, not just only Benue Basin. We talk about Calabar Basin, talk about Enugu Basin, talk about Ogu Basin. So here I want to say that we should all come together on how we can effectively establish, lay proper foundation of durability, longevity, and generation profitability with whatever is coming in.
Okay. Let's get back to the phones. We have, is it Charles, I think? Charles from Umwa here. Did I get that right? Yes, hello? Hello, do we have Charles on the line?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, good evening. I want to thank the national chairman of the host community. Yeah, you see, he said he had his own is the challenges he is to face on how to implement the fund. But I want to ask a very pertinent question on how that is the parameter by which the leadership of this national host community is being formed, so that we can know, some of those of us that are coming from this side of the country, we know how to come on board with our own people. Because all these things, he said the governors, they are not there, the National Assembly members, they are not there. I don't know the parameter by which we can now know those that are to come for the formation of the leadership. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And just before Prince Mike Emu responds to that, we have a report coming from Port Harcourt. This one is by Kingsley Amajiri.
Okwa, Umechem in Eche local government area, Belema, Ofoyama, Kola in Akokotoro local government area to Obe in Ahoda East local government area of Rivers State. The tale of most oil host communities are similar. Despite the 13% derivation fund and establishment of NDDC, the fortunes of these communities over the years have remained a concern.
There is no standard hospital in Kola. So if there is any emergency, you have to run through, get a boat, and then run before you get to Abunima to assess Medicare. And that's a very serious concern for us.
Key concerns for many of those within the host communities have been the need for inclusion and participation in the oil and gas sector, provision of basic social amenities, and job creation for the locals.
Let the host communities be responsible. The host communities should set up an economic council that will draw up a budgetary plan to address basic amenities that bedevils.
All right, there's still another talking about the host communities, and let's take this one from Akure by Ulubukola Aduo.
Ayetoro community in Ilaje local government area of Ondo State, founded in 1947, was said to be a bubbling island settlement until recently when the Atlantic Ocean began its progressive encroachment. Almost half of Ayetoro, one of the major oil-producing locations in Ondo State, has been washed off by the ferocious sea. The story of Ayetoro typifies the general situation in many oil-producing communities spread across two local government areas of Ilaje and Eseldo in Ondo State. Over the years, these communities have remained underdeveloped with no electricity, potable water supply, educational and medical facilities.
Many of the amenities we have here are gone into the sea. Our children are schooling under fear because we only have some makeshift schools right now.
This is the same river we drink.
You get to Ondo before you can access good quality care.
These are the major challenges which the new Act hopes to address with the allocation of 3% of operating expenditure to host communities. Already, there are major areas where the implementation of the Act could be directed in Ondo State. The major areas, according to residents of various communities, are provision of electricity, water, and educational facilities.
The people themselves, they have their future in their hand now. They know how best to inject the money to cater for their immediate need. The Act has regulated how that money will be spent. So if you go outside the stipulation of the law, then you are contravening the law.
Some residents of these oil-producing communities, however, commended the National Assembly for passing the Petroleum Industry Bill into law after many years, and the President for signing it, but advised that the Act should be implemented to the letter.
All right. That report by Olubukola Aduo. It's back to the phones, and we have Ifeanyi Chukwu calling in from Port Harcourt. Hello.
Hello. Good evening.
Chukwu, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Go right ahead. We can hear you.
Hello. My name is Agu Ifeanyi Chukwu, calling from Port Harcourt. Okay. The journey of a kilometer starts with a step. Though the 3% seems inadequate, it is better than 0% of the past years. Has this 3% overtaken the responsibilities of 13% state governments, NEDC, Niger Delta, and Ministry of Niger Delta? The problem is not the 3% now, for what I'm saying. It is the sharing. How will this 3% be used to benefit every person that belongs to the communities where this oil is raised? Remember what happens during the public hearing. Just to bring somebody who will speak for the public hearing, there was Mike Tyson. People started boxing themselves. It was a glaring of everyone. Then what happens in the sharing of this moon? That is the problem. Who are the people that are appointed? Will you call people who have been using what they have been using to suppress others? Just imagine what happened in Nembe a few months ago. In the presence, in the house of the King Data of all people, because of allocation given to the community. Will you continue to repeat? Is it another aim of killing people in the Niger Delta? Because the sharing is a problem. Who are those going to be nominated? That's my question. Who are the people going to be involved? Are you going to look at the old people that have been doing what they have been doing and it's not resulting in anything? Does it mean that the companies are not giving something to the people? They give something to people and few people share these things. And the other ones are suffering. That is why I have this problem in the communities. Who will take the horn? Who will do this now? Who will do it? Who will do it? That's my problem. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Agu Ifeanyi Chukwu calling in from Port Harcourt. At this point, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. When we return, there'll be more on the host communities.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth Entrepreneurship Support Years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
All right, let's go back to Xavier Oscar in Port Harcourt. Now, let's paint a scenario here. Assuming the communities get together, they take care of the leadership question, and the people get together, and there's unanimity of purpose to determine how to deploy the resources that will come to them from the provisions of this law. What are your thoughts about the immediate areas of attention? What this fund should go through?
You see, we have a lot that we suffered in our various communities. In the first place, we don't have any good roads in our various communities. We are suffering in how to access our communities with a good roads. We are also not having good potable drinking waters in our various communities. We also do not have good health center in our various communities. We also do not have better education in our various communities. These are supposed to be one of the attributes or one of the benefits or dividends of a good government. A government that is in place, a system that thinks about its people, a system that is concerned about its citizens, will provide jobs for the restive youth. There are a lot of restive youth on the street. What is the government doing about it? What will this act? How are we going to get job from it? Now, we also have some other establishments that exist in the Niger Delta. How far have they been able to provide or answer to some of these questions? Our pending question is very simple. We are happy, even though it's not up to our expectation, but at least we already have a starting point to move forward with. Now, the issue is how we going to benefit from it, because like I keep saying, and I will continue to say, we are currently having a negative or bad system of leadership. The system of leadership have also affected the system of leadership we also have in the Niger Delta. The same reasons that this PIB becomes 3%. If we are having leadership quality, that our leaders speak not just for themselves, but also speak for the people or the communities, we will not have situations like this. If we also have an effective system of leadership, we will not be having 3% coming out from 10%, from 15% to 10, from 10 to 5 in the House of Rep, from House of Rep to 3 in the Senate. We won't be having situations like this. But because we are not having an effective leadership system, and that is why it's affecting us seriously. And we must be able to look at it critically. Those that will be representing us from the implementation stage, from the steering committee, if you ask me, I would have suggested that Mr. President should not allow the Minister for Petroleum to be the steering chairman, because we do not need someone that will come in to play politics into this thing. We need an ordinary citizen that will come into the place and then make sure things work perfectly well. We don't need a politician to come there and then come and play politics with what the people have struggled for. The people of Niger Delta have struggled so much for this cause. The people of Niger Delta have suffered so much to achieve or to get to this stage. We do not need our struggle to be played with. Politics should not come into it. So if you ask me, politicians should step aside from what belongs to the host communities. The problem we're having in the society is coming from politicians. And if we do not allow them or keep them away from meaningful activities, from developmental issues, it will also not to get a result. We will not be getting any result from it. So our problem is that the minister should step aside. Let's look for someone from the host community to take charge of this on some position. Let the whole situation be looked at by host communities. Let's keep politicians away from it. Even though we do not have or 100% trust among those that will come in. But at least let it be that, yes, we are the one suffering from what we create for ourselves. How do we get job? Youth are on the street. A lot of youth are graduating every year into the street. What is the provision that this situation is going to help them in? Now we need to get the youth out of the street for job, for people to get job. And it is very, very important. And that is one of the troubling situations we face in our society, because it's also affecting the insecurity or the security situation in our country. By the time we handle youth restiveness, how do we help in reducing kidnapping? How do we help in reducing teenage youth from becoming part of cult activities? Because a lot of youth, both graduate, undergraduate, and also those in secondary schools, are already involved in cultism. How do we address a situation like this with this act? If we can be able to address a situation like this with this act, and I'm quite sure that if a situation like this is handled, we'll be able to go far than the way we are today. Let all these dividends of democracy be looked into. The NDC, who are supposed to be an interventionist agency, to give out or to deliver the dividends of its purpose to the people, has not done that. Because strikes, we do not have a system that is working. Just like I keep saying, and I'll keep saying it, we don't want a SUA administrator to continue again because he has a limited capacity. Let the purpose of which NDC was.
Okay. All right, Oscar. Let's go over to Prof. Prof, two quick issues here. Do you share the view that the minister, being a political appointee, should not be part of the steering committee? Only the people's representatives, I mean, I say people's representative in the context of those at the host communities right there, the leaders of the people. But then you do have the local politics in choosing leaders, don't you?
Very true. You see, the role of the minister as chairman of the National Steering Committee, I actually have no problem with it. Because at the national level, Mr. President needs to hold a minister responsible for the purposes of steering the implementation of the provisions of the PIA. Is that a political thing? Does it necessarily make the minister a politician with respect to how the trust funds and how the provisions of the act are implemented? Let's not forget that the role of the steering committee is not just that of seeing to the trust fund and the development of the host community. The steering committee has responsibility for bringing the upstream regulatory commission into place, for bringing the midstream and downstream regulatory authority into place, to see that the boards of these two bodies are constituted in accordance with the provisions of the Act, to make detailed regulations for the operation of these various agencies, to also see to the transition of the NNPC as a statutory corporation to the new NNPC, a limited liability company, holding the assets of the federal government through the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and the Ministry of Finance. So the responsibility, I think, is appropriately vested in a minister who is accountable to the president. Don't forget that, we don't have a minister for petroleum. It's a portfolio that is still vested in the president himself. And so, in holding somebody responsible, it is not out of place that the minister is charged with this responsibility. I don't think it necessarily transcends to playing politics, with the development of host communities, because that is not the entirety of the responsibility of the committee that is being steered by the minister.
All right. Okay. Thanks. At this point, we still have other reports coming in, and this one is from Owerri. It's by Priscilla Owen.
Story of oil-bearing communities in Imo State can be likened to killing the goose that lays the golden egg. Ohaji Eboma, just like Oguta local government area, is host to about 5 oil companies, while Oguta has more. Power supply in these rural areas was achieved mostly through communal efforts. This explains why the petroleum industry bill meant so much to the people of Imo State and most of all the oil-producing areas.
From here to Etekuru, the road no good. No road. This place, if you follow this side now, reach down, the road no good.
In this community, for us to get to town, before it was like 15 minutes from here you can get to town, but now you can even spend up to 45 minutes. You are not even out of this road.
Even our youth, the individuals, the graduates, none of them are employed in the oil producing. You see that in this place we see youth moving about, which they can be fished in some of the sectors in the oil producing components.
The signing of the bill by President Muhammadu Buhari has no doubt raised the hopes of the people as they see it as a step that will end their many years of neglect and deprivation. The people, however, describe as commendable the decision to transmit the location direct to the host communities.
Thank God they have given us the 3%, and I pray that it will reach us to the communities, particularly the villages and the autonomous communities that are so much suffering.
They further say effective utilization of the fund is paramount and express the hope that impact of proceeds from the allocation will be evident.
If it's well utilized, if it's well managed, it's going to help us to solve cases of youth restiveness by the way of providing employment, establishing cottage industries, by way of providing many social amenities like schools, hospitals, roads, electricity, water, etc.
For now, the people are looking forward to speedy implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act.
There are more reports on the host communities, and we have an upcoming one from Asaba by Thelma Eliogu.
With the new act passing to law, what we're expecting is only government has always had good intentions. It's man that in so many cases fail. If not, it's like when you are in government, every year you make your budget. The essence of that budget is to work for your people, to make your people feel the essence of governance.
Oil-producing states in Nigeria for years receive 13% derivation every month from the Federation account. Proceeds from oil and gas exploration in their communities. These monies are for development of the communities. However, a visit to some of such communities in Delta State leaves a lot to be desired in terms of development.
They call us oil producing community. Meanwhile, we are suffering. You understand? We are suffering. No light. Look at our road here. Company here operating here too has not done anything for us.
I think the leaders of the communities are the problem of this very issue on ground. The leaders will collect money from the company and they will not do anything.
While enumerating their challenges, the indigents seek government's intervention in ensuring firms exploring oil and gas in their communities live up to their social and corporate responsibilities.
The oil company has their tricks. They will always want us to quarrel so that they make their money. And for this, we have refused even in this community to quarrel any longer.
The gas here is what is feeding this area because it's like water. Company that is possessing, that is exploring it is enjoying it. Though we are praying so that they will also change to help the community because we are having a lot of problems.
The youth are not benefiting in terms of job opportunity. It's only security, driver, and casual jobs. They are not permanent jobs.
With good roads, well-equipped hospitals, electricity, and jobs for the teeming youths, urban migration in these areas will reduce.
All right, let's go over to you and Honorable. In view of the numerous challenges and so many challenges and problems of the host communities, it does create a difficult situation determining the priority list of what should be addressed, how quickly it should be addressed, and just how much to put into those places, doesn't it? Hello. Okay. So while we try to get Honorable Emmanuel Akpanobong back on the line, let's see if we can get to the phones now and take a call. Dr. Bukar calling in from Abuja. Hello.
Yeah. Bukar Abba.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Bukar
Yes,
Abba, go ahead.
Dr. Bukar Abba from NNPC Abuja.
All right, go ahead.
Dr. Abba, thank you very much for having me. I am grateful that this is the second time I am appearing on this national program that you are the one anchoring. I appeared last time when the national content, that is the National Content Development Act, was passed. You remember today I'm coming back. We are grateful to Almighty God that I and you, we are all alive. We are all alive and the country is alive, and those that we miss them, may their soul rest in peace. Petroleum Industry Bill, I am a researcher in NNPC. I am a writer. I am a publisher. I am the author of the NNPC at 44. Today, exactly at this hour, NNPC is 44 years and 5 months. I just finished dropping the pen of 1,000 pages book that I have been writing for the past 5 to 4 years. Successfully, I was guided by the best GGM GPAD that came back, Garbadin Mohammed. Garbadin Mohammed, a senior journalist, and at the same time, president of the Guild of Editors, guided me that the book I'm writing on NNPC 40 years in 2016 should be periodic and should be voluminous. Now, PIB has been passed. With the passage of the PIB, it has become PIA. The act is here. The speakers are there. I respected them. God bless the professor. God bless the chairman of the host community. God bless the youth leader. How many of them are speaking directly from their community? How many of them reside in their community from morning till afternoon till evening? Now, they are all asking the question, how do we implement what is called the percentage to the communities? First and foremost, God bless our president, President Muhammadu Buhari GCFR. NNPC was established 1st April 1977 by the Olusegun Obasanjo administration. Muhammadu Buhari is the federal commissioner appointed by General Olusegun Arimu Obasanjo GCFR to head the NNPC. The same Muhammadu Buhari GCFR is today signing a law that will change the life and the aspect of the host community into a vibrant and better society for them. They are now asking all of them, how will this impact them? Okay, let us start as follows. Can you all repeat after me that Nigeria says we don't want corruption? Nigeria says we don't want corruption. Let it be repeated by all the oil-producing communities. Let it also be repeated at the Federal Executive Council tomorrow after the national anthem. All these statements you have been saying from beginning to end, nobody is talking about fighting corruption. I was shocked. I was disturbed. Today I am exactly 30 years in NNPC. I joined NNPC at the age of 22. I joined NNPC as a young graduate of ordinary national diploma. I was given a level playing ground. Now, the establishment of NNPC, 1st April 1977, by General Olusegun Obasanjo GCFR, headed by Colonel Muhammadu Buhari of the Nigerian Armed Forces. Now, the benefit of the host community.
Dr. Bukar Abba, I appreciate the fact that you've written a book or you're still writing some other books, but tonight the issue is about the host communities, and we'd appreciate if you just limited those comments, because there are other people who want to talk about the host communities and how to implement the provisions of this law. Good enough, you've raised, a key point here, corruption. And so let's take it straight to Honorable Emmanuel Akpanobong. I'm sure he's back with us now. Before we went to the call by Dr. Bukar Abba, we're saying that with the many challenges of the host communities, it would seem like a Herculean task to decide on, the prioritization of what to do with the resources. Now that Dr. Bukar Abba has also raised an important question, how do you banish corruption? How do you make sure that what has been destroying all parts of the country for some time now is kept away from the implementation of the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act?
Okay, thank you. I think the concept of generating a master plan for the development of a place is very, very crucial. It's important. The piecemeal to bring up projects is one of the things that can cause distortion. So if a master plan for every community is brought up and then implementation follows the laid down guidelines, the short-term project, medium-term, long-term, it will be easy. Of course, the issue of corruption, as mentioned here, is something that should be emphasized at all times. If the laws, if the guidelines, and then the implementers follow the rules, there is no way we cannot do without this corruption issue. A caller earlier talked about the problem of sharing, and that connotes sharing the money. But if the target is development, most of the clips we've watched recently have shown that the need for educational project, need for roads, need for hospitals, if those things are targeted and with proper implementation and utilization of the contractors, corruption can be eliminated. Of course. And also the idea that the politicians, those who are living in the urban areas, those who are living, should be completely detached from the process may not be completely right. Of course. They are also part of that community. That they are in the urban areas could also be a plus. Everybody should come together to work for the development of the host communities and the various communities of the Niger Delta. So this way, and in fact, like the people in the National Assembly, we expect that from time to time, they should have regular.
Oh dear. Well, we just lost out on that, but I'm sure that glitch would be taken care of, and Honorable Emmanuel Akwanobong can get back to us. Sometimes you have these challenges coming up. But again, let's come here to the studio with Prince Mike Emu. You heard the contributions of Dr. Bukar Abba, and you saw where the Honorable had taken it up from. How do you ensure that you keep this away from the implementation of the provisions of this law?
The indubitable fact remains that we are fighting many wars today. The war against Boko Haram, the war against henchmen and kidnappers, the war against corruption. And thank God that we're having a God-given general, retired general, who is never tired. And I want to say that people may not like what I'm saying, like my face, or like to hear what I'm saying. President Muhammadu Buhari happened to be the best president that we ever had in this country, because he has signed into law the PIA that favors the host community. So we celebrate him. On that, I want to say that we're having 154 communities that produce oil and gas from the 9 oil-producing states in Nigeria. And we're having 11 imparted states, pipeline imparted states in Nigeria. And all are embedded in the PIA. And so I, as the national chairman, I have a challenge of how we are going to raise leaders from 154 communities that produce oil and gas and 11 imparted states, Kogi State, Niger State, Kaduna State, Bauchi State. These are imparted states. And I have to reach out to these states. And how can we actually harness people that will be autosuggestive, people who will have innovation to diffuse, people who have the fear of God. Now, we must go back to the traditional rulers. If we are looking for a lawyer from a community, the traditional ruler knows his children. We're looking for an engineer. And so if these people goes wrong, in whatever administration they carry out, then the committee will hold them responsible. And so we need to go back to the drawing board to have a master plan by bringing in the people that are auto-suggestive, people that are dynamic, people who have vision, people who have the fear of God, and who have the mind of the development of the Niger Delta at the back of their mind together, so that we can move forward with the fund that we are having. We are not going to welcome corruption. I want to say that for what my people have contributed so far, that you cannot remove politicians because they are also from the oil producing communities. The politicians were those that created the PIB. They made it. And so we must look inward. We must look at the leaders of thought. We must look at Tropcon from the Niger Delta. We must go back to say, what can the IYC give to us? What can the Ogoni people, the Mosop, give to us? Who can they give to us? And the Akwa Ibom and so forth and so on, the Robo, the Jos, here and there, leaders of thought that will become think tank, that will actually carry out the plan towards how this money will be used. Now, thank God that Mr. President appointed a son of the Niger Delta from Bayelsa State, the Honorable Minister for Petroleum State, Silva, and that is there as the chairman of the steering committee. The steering committee are not the implementation committee, and so they will put things in place. But I want to say that everybody that listens to us tonight should know that the host community has been suffering, and now the host community has woken up to the challenge that we need to get our 30% derivation back. We need to get back in the NDDC into place, get back, put things in place, how we can actually bring the Niger Delta into a more enviable geopolitical zone in Nigeria. Presently, the most peaceful geopolitical zone you have in the country is the Niger Delta. The present relative peace we enjoy in Nigeria and the development in terms of our economy, the growth is because of the peace in the Niger Delta. And what Mr. President is doing, we're gladdening the heart of the people of the Niger Delta the more to welcome more ideas and more plans that can lead to transformation. So I'm saying that we are going to tackle the issue of corruption. That's a war that we must join Mr. President to fight. And then we also support the federal government of Nigeria to bring to an end all this war that we are facing in the country today. Thank God that Nigerian defense have woken up, and so soon the issue of Boko Haram will be forgotten issue. And the traditional rulers, leaders of thoughts and religious leaders have woken up to the challenge of the insecurity. And so with the 3% that is coming to the host community, that has come to the host community as per law, 13% started with 1.5% at the time of Shagari regime. Abacha brought it to 13%. And so let us see, primary school, we started not from primary 6, we started from primary 1. Let's start with what we've got now. If we manage it well, so soon we agitate for upward review. It is easy for upward review, amendment of the law, than to create a law. And so I want to appreciate Nigerians, and whoever has contributed so much today towards this, they should also rally around me. I will consult them and meet with the leaders of thought in all over the oil producing communities and the party communities to see how this can actually work out. That will gladden the heart of Mr. President.
All right. May I say, Oscar, back to you in Port Harcourt. It's been suggested by the last caller that's talking about Dr. Bukar Abba, that many of the times the people's leaders do not reside amongst the people. I'd like you to look at that. And he also raised the issue of corruption in getting this whole, the provisions of this law to a good start and making sure that it works. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the issue of corruption has eaten deep into every one of us. And that's the first point of how we can tackle this. Corruption has eaten so deep into us because, one, I asked a question, and my number one question is, why is it that host communities are always suffering from what they produce or from what they generate that are also being so much, that are giving so much to the society or to the country? Look at all the host communities that are into oil producing, or oil bearing or oil producing communities. You cannot have any good thing you will lay your hand on. You can never identify anything in any oil host communities that you can say this is what is tangible that have come to these host communities. Even when they are given scholarship from the IOCs, IOCs don't even look at the host communities as where they give their scholarship to. They also look at the recommendations from some of these top politicians. They look at recommendations from some of these men that are in the society they think they have respect for. And these are the people they call for recommendations in scholarship. How often do they go to the host communities to make it easier for people that are living in the community to have a better life? It is very challenging, and that's why every oil-bearing communities are suffering today. The residents of oil-bearing communities have nothing good to talk about. Most of the development that is being cited, it's cited in the city. Everybody cannot afford to live in the city, and that's part of corruption. It is high time, if we must fight corruption, let's fight corruption the way it ought to be fought. Now, let's go back to the host communities and ensure that what belongs to them be given to them. If there is no good road, they should be given good roads. If there is no good health center, they should be given good health center. If there is no better sound educational system, they should be given a better sound educational system. If there is no good drinking potable water, they should give them a good drinking potable water. This is one of the ways we can tackle corruption, by ensuring that the people do not suffer from what they are giving out to the society or to the country. Outside that, let's also look at the aspect, when I talk about leadership qualities, I also see that most of our challenges because of political sentiment and leadership in politics and all that. I am very optimistic that if we do not pay attention to leadership in terms of host communities, in terms of this PIA, it's going to be a serious challenge. Today, how do we sort out challenges that is affecting us today? We must not wait for the times to come for us to protest before we can get the needful. Because what we see today is that when we are being deprived, the next thing we look at is that we go on the street to protest. Just like we are protesting now for a sole administrator to step aside in NDDC, knowing very well the significance of a constituted board. But right now, there is no substantive board in the commission. How do this give us some of the benefit that we need in the absence of the PIA that is coming into place now? NDDC was set up to ensure that some of these host communities that are oil producing communities, or some of these communities benefit so much from the commission. But do they benefit from it? No. Even most of the projects that have been cited are cited in the city. How many of these projects are cited in the communities where these resources is coming from? The people should be given attention, not just attention, due attention. If they are not given the due attention, then we must always see like we are having a failed system of governance. The credit or the failure will go to Mr. President. But for Mr. President to do it and do it well, I think I should also go to the people that are producing this thing to the country. And that's where we are going to tackle the corruption aspect from. If we can do this, we are also being able to tackle corruption. Now look at youth restiveness that I mentioned before. How many of our youth that are working in posts of these oil companies or IOCs? If you look at it very well, I asked a question. When last did Total actually publish or advertise job recruitment? When last do most of these companies, oil communities or oil companies publish or advertise for youth to come into employment?
Okay. Let me go briefly to Prof. And Prof, it would seem that from most of what has been said here today, it's about the question of the conduct of people who have been given responsibilities. It boils down to leadership again, and the fears that have been expressed about how the implementation will take place. There's so much skepticism about implementing programs, no matter how good they are on paper. Is it the absence of adequate laws guiding the conduct of persons and institutions, or is it the question of enforcing those laws and ensuring that the laws themselves work? What is the problem?
Cyril, the issue of effectiveness of government programs that I have just mentioned would appear to be a cost, on the Nigerian people. You can see that from government various efforts, the fact that there is a 13% derivation fund that is dedicated at the federal level for the development of oil-producing areas. The fact that beyond that, the federal government went on and the Oil Minerals Producing Commission, UNPADEC, was created, and that metamorphosed into what we have as the NDDC today. And you will then see that if you look at the record of performance of these agencies of the federal government, vis-a-vis what they have succeeded in achieving, both in terms of infrastructural development, in human resource development, in restoring or remediating the degraded environment of the Niger Delta area. As we lawyers will say, it is res ipsa loquitur. It speaks for itself that the funds that these agencies have been given by the federal government does not match what we can see on the ground. Evidently, therefore, the system is patently corrupt. Unfortunately, those you hold responsible for this failure of effectiveness are sons and daughters of the Niger Delta area itself. So this is a problem. You can look at it as part of the greater Nigerian problem, which the caller Booker has just mentioned, the cankerworm of corruption. Now, but to be a little bit much more prospective, what has just been done, in my view, in the PIA, is to further locate or relocate the point of responsibility to the immediate communities. Beyond the state government, beyond the politicians at the houses of assembly, beyond the administrators at the NDDC, beyond the civil servants in the Niger Delta, in the ministry, we now have a fund that is targeted at the lowest rung. And I agree with the chairman of the HostCom that this calls for a greater role for our traditional rulers. Indeed, when we talk of community representation and in the management of the Host Communities Development Fund, the only substantive existing structure that we can leverage on are the traditional institutions. Our traditional rulers and the various traditional councils of local governance still remain the closest institution to the lives of the communities, of the host communities. You saw the clips, of the parlor state of roads, the dearth of health facilities, and all of that. All of these are being suffered not only by the indigenous of the host communities, but also by the traditional rulers who live among them, who receive their complaints day in and day out, who all the various lamentations are brought to their doorsteps. They also manage to be able to wield authority within that parlor state. So this is an opportunity for us to now look at the traditional institutions and hold them responsible for the effective management of the Host Communities Development Fund. But still, before I close, but let me also point out this, that we'll expect the implementation committee to fashion out a mechanism where there will be tiers of responsibility between the responsibilities of the state government in the utilization of the 13% derivation fund, between the responsibilities of the Niger Delta Ministry for the entire development of the Niger Delta under a master plan, and also the responsibility of the NDDC, with respect to development of the same areas we are talking about. If there is no clear delineation of responsibility between these three or four tiers of resources that are available for the development of the Niger Delta, it will be another hotspot, a fertile ground for corruption. So we need to streamline. The needs of these areas include, no doubt, infrastructural development. They include, development of human resource. They include addressing the problems of environmental degradation caused by oil pollution and all types of waste generated in the petroleum industry. Now, in some of our communities, particularly the riverine community, the terrain is such that investment in infrastructures, particularly roads, hospitals, schools, and all of that, require huge capital expenditure. Now, I don't want to foresee a situation where, because some local communities are managing a trust fund established by either Chevron or Total, or Shell Petroleum Development Company, then the NDDC then abdicates its responsibility. Then the Niger Delta Ministry then abdicates its responsibility. And then the state government, after allocating a portion of the 13% derivation fund to the various local government structures, then abdicates its responsibility towards this community. I pray that is not the case. And we'll look forward to the implementation committee as well as the steering committee in making sure that there's clear delineation of responsibilities, so that we don't pursue multiple projects simultaneously or concurrently, with no clear individual or institution to hold responsible for particular projects. If we can do this, we will get somewhere. And like all the speakers have said, I pray that as this development comes to the host community, corruption can also be tackled at this level. Right. Because at the end of the day, if the community is not developed, if the funds are not utilized, the kings or traditional rulers and their various councils, if given a place to play in the host community development trust fund to be established, they will be held responsible, not only by the Nigerian state, but also by their own sons and daughters.
Right, thank you, Prof. Very interesting points you've raised there: infrastructure, the human resources development, environmental issues, and all these will require huge capital expenditure. And of course, but I do hope that now we have Honorable Emmanuel back with us. Okay, so we'll just go over to him and ask him to, as we begin to wind down, to give us the benefit of his thoughts on the issues that Prof has just raised now, and how Nigeria can make this act work.
That's right. Thank you. I want to say that notwithstanding the loopholes, the flaws that have been noticed or are being anticipated, that I want us to know that this act is opening a new chapter, and we should follow with confidence and would hope that development that we were yearning for has come, and we should follow through. We should, as we say, the implementation, the utilization of the rules and the guidelines to implement what has been written would definitely help development. Let us envision macro projects through master plan. As I said earlier, when we open up the rural areas, the host communities, even the rural-urban migration that we've been talking about can be reversed. The host communities can then be center of development, destination points. So it is a very big hope that with the amount of money expected, these mega projects can start. Cottage industries to keep the people on. And I want us to also advise ourselves. There is provision in this act that says that if the oil installations, pipelines, and so on are vandalized, the communities stand the risk of losing this money accruing to them. That is a warning, which I also pray that people from outside don't come to vandalize and give the host community people a bad name. I just want to hope that with all these things together, we move on. And also, I expect that related issues raised by the people of the Niger Delta, like the relocation of the operational headquarters of most of these IOCs or companies, moving to where these host communities are, should be considered. The oil companies should consider that it's now a friendly environment, that we work together to develop these communities. They come work here, pay taxes to the communities or the local government here. That way we'll grow. And I think that with proper implementation, as I said,
all right. Okay. It does happen all the time now when you're just about landing and it freezes. But, well, we have just a few more minutes to go. And at this point, let me just put the last question to all our guests. And I always ask this, at least since discussions began on the Act. Nothing is cast in stone, is it? You envisage that there'll be a push for amendments to gray areas that you might even discover after you start implementing the Act? Prince?
I strongly believe that there is room for upward review, room for amendment as time goes on. But let us start with what is now in our hands. A bird at hand, what two in the bush. If we make good use of what God has given to us through Mr. President, through the PIA, we always ask for upward review. And the law will always give chance to that.
Okay.
When our reasons are very, very clear for upward review, just as we agitated for upward review of 13% derivation for 1.5, 3%, 5%, 30%, and we say if that is given to us now, we'll be asking for upward review to maybe 25% that we're agitating for. So there is room for upward review as time goes on.
Right. Xavier Oscar, what are your views? We look forward to a review. What do you say? Some say, no, let's just turn our backs on it. Others say, no, let's take what we have, and there's room for further negotiations. What do you say?
I I think at this point, I am not saying upward review as a challenge at this point, because considering the process that may take for us to see an upward review, what I want to look at for, or what I think is necessary right now, is the way forward. And what's the way forward is we should be able to look at the transparent process of implementation. Let us see how this process can be implemented in a transparent manner so that it can also affect the life of the people, affect the life of the host communities, affect the life of those that are suffering from the production of this oil exploration. Now that God has actually allowed or used Mr. President to sign this 3%, even though, like I said, we are not comfortable very much with it, but we have decided to see it as a starting point. So let's spend more of our time to look at the effective means of implementation and spend less time looking at our onward review, considering the process that it will take for us to achieve an onward review. I think with this, we can be able to do better, and then also call on Mr. President to see how those that will be involved in the steering committee, those that will also be involved in the implementation stage, should always be seen as people that have the people at heart. Because some of the challenges we have faced today is that those that are at the aims of affair do not look at the people they are representing as the most important sector. Rather, they see them first as the most important sector. We should not see our interests first as what we are projecting. Let us think of the interests of the people we are representing as the first means of projection. And by so doing, we'll be able to achieve what Mr. President has done for us, and also can always achieve what we intend to achieve in future.
Okay, thank you so much. And then, Prof, well, for you, Prof, I'd say, well, they always say no law is perfect, and there's room for, review if indeed it comes to light from its implementation that there are certain areas, like some that you have pointed out, that you think should be reviewed. You look forward to something like that soon?
Yes, sincerely, I look forward to a review of some of the architecture that the Act has put in place. As we have pointed out, there are quite a number of flaws and potential danger areas. We expect that in not too long a time in the future, the Act will be reviewed. But I also recognize the fact that we have an Act to implement, and a shot at the implementation will be will provide a better testimony of some of the shortfalls of the Act for the purposes of law reform.
All right.
Again, we also look forward to detailed regulations. Statutes cannot be as detailed to the most minute provision, because it's a statute. They cannot envision some of the nuances that may arise from implementation. So we expect that some of the things or shortcomings we pointed out, some of the fears we have expressed, detailed regulations may be able to straighten them out.
All right.
For example, my colleague here just mentioned the issue of damage to to oil facilities, and Section 257 of the Act says, a community will forfeit what is entitled benefit from the trust fund, for cost of repairs of any damage to facilities domiciled in the community. The Act didn't say that there must be a finding that it was caused by the community. The Act also didn't say that this takes away the responsibility for security of oil facilities from the oil companies, and so it is the host communities that must now police oil facilities and make sure that no damage arises, because if the damage arises, it will be deducted from funds that will otherwise enable the development of their community.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. And we'll have to leave this conversation at this point. And thank all our guests. Prince Mike Emu, National Chairman, Host Communities of Nigeria Producing Oil and Gas, HOSCON. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Imeabe Xavier Oscar, member Host Communities Ogoni, who joined us from our Port Harcourt Network Center. Thank you for being here. And Professor Joseph Abugu, Professor of Commercial and Industrial Law, who joined us via Zoom from Warri. And also Honorable Emmanuel Akpanobong, a medical practitioner and former member of the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly, who is Deputy National Secretary of PANDEV. He joined us via Zoom from Uyo. I'd like to thank you all for your contributions to this program, and to all those who called in as well. Thank you for being part of the program. Next week we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover, and I say continue to stay safe.